I just got in the car. Harry phoning me late at night. I drove to the local motorway bridge, which I still have to drive across now, which never got any easier. I got out of the car, walked up and climbed that bridge, and if it wasn't for a passerby, probably that night would have jumped.
Mo Farah or Paula Radcliffe?
Oh no!
Mate, that's the question. Round 12. Are you going to fail? Are you going to fall in the final round?
Probably. Oh God, I didn't expect to get upset. Probably just my first coach and everything. Everything he didn't do for me in terms of, he didn't push me. He didn't make me train when I didn't want to. If I wanted to kick a football around and piss him off, he let me do that.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Getting Back Up with me, Anthony Ogogo. In this podcast, I talk to inspiring people that have done great things in both their life and or career, but only after suffering massive setback and adversity. This podcast right here, the Getting Back Up podcast, is your weekly dose of hope and inspiration. And today's guest, I have Tom Bosworth MBE. Tom's a 3-time world record holder. He's a 2-time Olympian and a multiple-time British record holder in race walking. He is a part of British athletic royalty. Tom talks all about his personal life and his professional life and the highs and lows he experienced during his career. Now, a quick word of warning, we do talk about suicide in this podcast as Tom goes into detail about a period of his life where he tried to commit suicide twice, and it's really powerful and really thought-provoking stuff. But this is a really positive conversation. Tom goes into detail about competing at the Olympic Games, getting disqualified outside Buckingham Palace, the World Championship in 2017. This really is a super inspiring and amazing episode, if I do say so myself. So, without further ado, let's get stuck in. Mr. Tom Bosworth MBE, welcome to the Getting Back Up podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ant. It's an absolute pleasure.
Mate, no, pleasure is all mine. I've known you now for a couple of years. We're both with Katie at GVO, Good Vibes Only Talent. Big up, Katie, the
matriarch.
The matriarch, just the powerhouse of GVO. Thanks for arranging this. I've known you for a while, mate. And I know this lovable, happy, positive guy that exceeded beyond belief in his athletic career. That's not quite the case, is it? You've got a much darker story than your happy grin would let on.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something really smart to say there, but I couldn't come up with anything quick enough. So yeah, 99% of me is happy, smiley, pretty laid back, fun-loving Tom. But as everybody has, they have a dark secret side to them. That's that only comes out occasionally. And I think, to be honest, it was. I think with most things in life, it wasn't expected, and it was a period of my life that was one of the toughest and worst. And no matter your background, no matter what you've achieved, what you've done, how fortunate or how unfortunate supposedly you are in society, everybody can face these challenges. So it's something that I've learned from and hopefully become a better person.
Well, and that's great. You very much have the hero's journey. You have very much. I don't know if you're familiar with the hero's journey, but we'll talk more about it as the podcast goes on, I'm sure. But you mentioned it a minute ago. You mentioned like we all go through these moments in our lives, and I've heard you say in the past that you were not the stereotypical person to go through a mental health crisis. That was not you, and I can test. I was the same. I thought like things like that didn't happen to me. Like panic attacks, anxiety, me? What are you talking about? But mate, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy how you can be the 99% happy, fun-loving guy, but that 1% raises ugly head at some point in one's life. We're going to talk all about that today. But mate, I want to say you're my guinea pig. You're my member of the British Empire guinea pig today, because I'm changing the podcast bit. We're doing 12 rounds. Can you stand 12 rounds of Anthony Ogogo, the governor? Can you do it?
No.
When I say rounds, I mean questions, and I'm sure you're going to get past all 12 rounds. At the end, if there's time, we'll do a little quick fire round, little round 13. There's always a round 13.
Sounds unlucky.
I almost call this podcast round 13 because this podcast is about obviously getting back up and what's next. And obviously boxing 12 rounds, round 13, there's always something next after, after the final bell, and you're very much that person. But the most important question I'm going to ask you today, of all 12, is this, and I hope you answer very honestly and openly and frankly. How the bloody hell are you, sir?
I am great. Like the Frosties advert used to be, that is exactly how I'm feeling.
You really are?
Yeah. I'm a little tired, I'm not going to lie, because I've just come from the gym. I've managed to squeeze that in a lunchtime sesh. But you know what? I'm so busy at the moment, and I am loving that, because as an athlete, you never had any sort of freedom. Your life was dictated by training, and so you became busy by doing very little, because all you had to do was train, eat, and recover, and it was crucial. All of it was crucial. When you're trying to perform at the very best, doing nothing bit is just as crucial as the training bit. So now, I love the fact that, okay, it was daunting when retiring because I had to go into the real world. But now I love that I've got so much going on that I don't even see my own reflection, let alone my family, sort of thing. So that's where I'm at. I'm working with the governing bodies, sporting governing bodies, to get people walking more. I'm working with athletics clubs and teaching race walking. So I'm doing all of that. And then there's all sorts of bits in my own life that I'm trying to achieve. I'm doing the gardening, which I love. I love doing the gardening. And instead of going training and then coming in tired and getting in a bad mood and trying to push the lawnmower around and cut the grass, I'm doing that first with a cup of coffee in the mornings. Me and Harry, my husband, are in a great place. We are trying to prioritize our relationship as much as possible, because, again, as an athlete, we've neglected that a bit. So that's why I'm just loving life. I was in 2 schools this morning, just giving some sporting love and trying to motivate the next generation. And now I'm here talking to you. So I'm just in a great mood.
Mate, I'm and I've been the guy that said, "Oh yeah, I'm great," when really things weren't great. I was playing the facade. But here, and again, nobody knows what's going on in people's minds, obviously. But like hearing you say that and watching you say that from the power of the screen, you look happy. You actually look and sound happy, and I'm really pleased. I wasn't too sure the answer was going to be. But question 2, round 2, you made it past round 1, round 2. So round 2 question is the call to adventure. And I say this because you are a 3-time world record holder. Now, still, there are 3 world records out there that says Tom Bosworth MBE. You're that guy. You've got medals at Commonwealth Games, you've gone to 2 Olympic Games, Rio 2016, an amazing, unbelievable, life-changing event, Tokyo 2020, 2021. You've done so much, right? This year's honours list, right? From the king. Wow. I mean, what happened? How? Like, were you born great? Was greatness thrust upon you? But most people don't do these things, have those things after their name. Like, what was different about you? Was it a childhood thing? Take me back to the beginning.
Ooh, that's nice, because I've never really been asked that question before. Because I think everyone when you hear an athlete, you just assume a high achiever.
And you were different, weren't you? You were a little bit different.
Yeah,
in the story.
Exactly. And this is the message I tell every parent and kids. And I think the parents are actually more important to hear it than the kids are, because it's the parents who take your kids along to whatever they want to do and keep them turning up each week. But yeah, for me, my parents, they gave me everything I wanted. And I don't mean they just spent loads of money on me. They gave me loads of good opportunities in life to start with. If I wanted to try and play a musical instrument, I could do that. If I wanted to do some sport, I could do that. They weren't sporty. They weren't particularly musical, but they just said, yeah, go and give it a go. But if you do something, see it through. And that was something that I'm really pleased. I guess my parents, they never let me quit, even as badly as I was doing. And that was it with sport. Sport for me was something different. I hated PE. PE wasn't sport to me. PE was football or rugby. And I'm built like a beanpole. So contact sport for me as a kid was just terrifying, even though I really enjoyed it. But at school, you know what kids are like. They'd just pick on the smallest kid, and I'd get rugby tackled to oblivion. So I quickly stopped enjoying PE. But athletics, I did a bit of gymnastics outside of school, was what I really enjoyed, because I could go as slowly as I liked. It didn't really matter. Nobody was going to rugby tackle me off the track, which was great. So I always enjoyed being outside. I always enjoyed sport, but I was rubbish at it. And I think that was because I just had in my head, I'm this skinny little kid who's just, never going to be anything sporty, but I can enjoy it. And my involvement with sport will always be watching it on the telly, and that's it. And that's it. So athletics, I enjoyed the running. I tried this bizarre event of race walking, and I loved the long jump as well. And I just kept turning up and having fun. And that's what my first coach really installed in me, was just keep going, just enjoy the fresh air with the teammates, the social aspect of it, and hey, that's the most you need.
I'm going to say some words now. I'm going to say a quote that I heard, and I would like you to tell me what emotions are evoked when I say this. God must have hated you. You're ginger, skinny, and gay.
Yes, that was the wise words of one of my peers at school.
I wouldn't say wise, mate. I wouldn't say bigoted, more like.
Yeah, you know what though, kids don't know what they're saying, and we can only try and educate and encourage, but kids will just find anything, and I had a few easy targets on my back. I wasn't particularly camp or obviously what I would say stereotypically gay, which annoys me at school. So when I told a couple of friends, and then it got around the school.
And when did you know, Tom? When did you know?
Oh, well, knowing, I don't know, but I remember as young as my last year in primary school, so we were talking about age 10, and I remember thinking, oh, he's quite nice, and that sort of feeling. There's, at that age, there's no label on it, there's no sort of, it's not anything more than that, it's just an attraction. And I do remember thinking that, and then immediately, and I can picture exactly where I was in the school as well. I can remember it clear as day. Immediately going, oh, I don't think that's right. Like I don't think that. I think I should feel like that about girls. And then I sort of just closed the door on it. And at that age, you're not really thinking about that sort of thing very much.
So for me, not that I ever thought this, obviously consciously at the time, but my sister's gay, and I do some LGBT stuff for her, and I guess I've been called an ally, which I'm really proud of. And somebody said, I did a talk years ago, and I was like, nobody taught me to be straight. I remember I watched Blue Peter one day when I was a kid, and I fancied Katie Hill. and then I knew I was straight. Who was the first person you fancied?
Oh, God.
Listen, the Getting Back Up podcast, we go places people don't expect us to go.
I know. Who was the first person? I mean, I really had a big crush on one of my classmates. I remember that. But on telly, again, there wasn't really any. I mean, God, this is embarrassing. I do remember one when I was probably a bit older than him as well, which is a bit weird. But I do remember having a big crush on Zac Efron in High School Musical.
Yeah, I see that.
I was in my late teens, and yeah, but that's probably one of the first. And I had a massive crush on the actor Mitch Hewer, who played Maxie in Skins. And he was the first gay character on telly that I remember seeing.
Oh, really?
So, and that would have been about 2007 when I was 17. So, and I'm sure there were programs. I know Queer as Folk was on as well, which was iconic. But that was probably a bit before my time. So yeah, it was all sort of self-discovery a little bit, as we know, and I kind of had realised I was gay and just had come to terms with it. I hadn't told anybody though, but at school it came out not how I wanted to, and I got awfully bullied for it. And going back to that quote that you mentioned at the start, it was it takes you back to the worst time of my childhood.
And I just want to say, for those listening who thinks I'm being mean, that was a quote that you said. I heard you say that quote. I was repeating your words, and you were telling this story.
Yes, exactly. And the point to saying it is to say, like kids do say mean things that they don't really understand, and it's. I wish I had a good response for him back then, but
I mean, your sponsors becoming, Team GB athletics captain, winning medals around the world, 3-time world record holder, and an MBE after name. Fuck that guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. But I think it highlights why sport is a little bit backwards with accepting and welcoming, people who slightly don't fit the norm, because they all seemed, all those three things, that my body type, my hair color, and my sexuality, and especially that, all seemed negatives. And for some reason, and that was on the field of play at school. I remember that being in a PE lesson, or actually just at the end of one. So I think it shows that quite early on, if you're really skinny, sport's not for you. But actually, there's a load of endurance sport, and sort of sexuality means you can go and do the theatre because that's a stereotypically safe place. Is it like that? That's what I think. Those stereotypical views are put on us quite young, and that proves that. And you can see why then people, in my shoes, might have quite literally run in the opposite direction away from sport, because you're just told it wasn't for you, which is why when I found athletics, I just felt at home.
Why did you feel at home?
Because it could just be me. I wasn't relying on a teammate. I wasn't relying on being part of a squad. I decided how fast or slow or how much hard work I put in, and it was only my result being affected. And so as I became more content being me, the results sort of followed, and I could just escape. It was just me in my head, which was quite nice at that age.
I mean this in the nicest possible. I'm a huge fan of sport and athletics. I mean, they say in athletics, and it's half said in jest, but the less talented you are, the longer distance you run or compete. So 100 meters is the blue ribbon event, and the slower you get, the race walking is the slowest event because you're walking, right? Although you're rowing very, 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 very fast. And then there's like a people can't see what I'm doing. And then there's like a seesaw kind of thing where, like, what I'm saying is, if you're not unbelievably rapid over 50 meters, you're never going to win 100 meters. And that's like a lot of it is obviously Usain Bolt trains hard, Asafa Powell trains hard, but a lot of that is God given, right? Similar to amateur boxing in the Olympics, like you box for 9 minutes, whereas pro boxing is 12 rounds. It's 36 minutes. So the longer, the more endurance event, the more, I think, the less physical it comes down to, and more mental. Would you kind of agree with that?
Well, okay, I'll put it like this to you. Do you think if you'd started at age 16, you could have walked a 20k and become one of the best in the world, or even best in the country? Do you think, with your physicality, the way you're built, you would ever been a successful endurance athlete?
I hate walking.
Or running then? Would you ever have been able to run a 10k in 27.5 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was looking pictures of me when I was boxing yesterday, I was built not quite as slim as you. It wasn't too different when I was boxing. I was very lean. I was 72 kilos as middleweight. In the Olympics, I was 75 kilos, 6'2", 6'1.5", 6'2". So very lean. So
about 20 kilograms too heavy to be an endurance athlete then.
70 kilos?
I think Mo Farah was pretty much a little bit under me because he's shorter than me, and I was 54 kilograms.
Really? That was cool. Goodness me, yeah.
You don't want extra muscle to carry around.
The point I was making was this: is like, don't get me wrong, every athlete, no matter what sport or discipline you do, you require so much natural, God-given ability and also mental fortitude as well. But I personally think the long-distance athletes as well, like, and I'd class boxing in that. Boxing's a funny sport where it's like to be a good boxer, you need everything. You need explosive power, you need speed, you need strength, you need endurance to go that long. There's no fitness like boxing in the world. But I think the long-distance sports, you need some kind of deep down grit and will, which you don't really need as a 100-meter athlete or 200, because it's just so short or sharp.
Oh, mentally, you have to be disturbed to do endurance sport. There's no doubt about it.
You're disturbed in the head.
yeah, exactly. But I think, I saw somebody write this the other day on one of my videos online, and they said, "Oh, he's got long legs. He's got an advantage." And I roll my eyes a little bit, And it's like, well, yeah, but there's a chap who's a little bit taller than me back in 5th. And there's a chap a little bit shorter than me in 2nd place. Sport is what you cannot do anything about how you are built, your genes, and how you grow. When people say that people have an advantage over with it when you're talking the same sport, it does my head in. Of course you do. It's why you end up being world class. But it's whether you end up what gets you there is whether you are able to commit, train hard, sacrifice, all those sorts of things to get you there. What you being anybody might be the best physical fit for a sport, but it's why I say, especially on race day, on fight night, competing is about 75% mental, if not 80% mental, and 20% physical. And I believe that for almost any sport, because any sportsman will tell you that if their head isn't in the right place, they will fail.
By the time you get in the ring and that first bell goes, or by the time you stand on that line waiting for the gun to go, all the hard work is done.
Exactly.
And that day or that week, really, from weigh-in or fight week, when you turn up at Vegas and you go through all the rigmarole of the press and the press conferences, etc. It's all mental. So let's talk about the journey. And it's an amazing journey, and the ups and downs that you experienced. Like, when you said you didn't excel straight away, and consistency was really your thing. You turned up. So when did it change? When did you? Because you do. So far, you went to the athletic club as a bit of an escape. You go as fast or as slow as you liked, and it's like, you weren't that good. I've heard you say you weren't particularly that. You didn't excel. The next thing you know, you got 3 world records, and Team GB athletics captain. So what happened in between that?
10 years happened. So. Yeah, when I was about 17, I started to I think I stopped growing. I just sort of grew into my body a little bit. So I improved a tiny bit, and that motivated me, as improvement tends to do. And so I started training a little bit more, and then quite quickly, because I think I'm quite naturally, I've always been built like an endurance athlete. People would always say, "Oh, Tom, you don't eat enough," and all this. You're so skinny, and I'm like, it's my parents were exactly the same. I can eat and eat and eat, and I don't put anything on. Touch wood, that continues. Now I'm 34, but that sort of God-given or natural ability went hand in hand with then starting to train a little bit more, and then as a result, I got a little bit faster and so on. And so literally, it was quite overnight that from age 17, when I started to feel a bit more positive about it, to age 19, I'd gone from pretty much last in the county to top 3 in the country, and making my first GB team at the European Cup as over 10K, which was the junior distance. Olympic distance is 20K. And I just thought, whoa, what the fuck happened there? How on earth did that happen? And it was all, but again, it was all just fun. None of it was ever serious, because I never thought I thought that was a career peak. And the career highlight.
So did you never think you were going to make a career out of race walking?
Never.
So you did it as an escape and for enjoyment.
And for fun. Yeah. And yeah, it was starting to get like hard work but when you get rewarded for that in terms of personal bests, and it was always intrinsic, there was never, I'm a real extrovert, and I'm a loud, bubbly person, but even throughout my career, I was not bothered by the physical medal. If there was any prize money, that's all great. I was never doing it for that. But I'm so happy that my name still sits first in the UK for pretty much every distance, because that's what I was doing it for. I wanted to be the fastest in the end. Every PB it was, I've done that, and it might never get any better. So it was, I just enjoyed the ride. And then that opened doors. I managed to go to university at Leeds Beckett University, which there was sort of a British athletics endurance hub there, so I could go and train full time. But going in and training full time, I was training about 3 or 4 times a week to 12 times. My God, my body didn't know what hit it. I was doing 30K, 40K a week, to them wanting me to do 100 to 120 kilometers a week, 3 marathons a week, with a day off in the gym as well, to keep your core strength and the rest of it. so all of that, I then had to learn how to become a professional athlete.
So go on. So I guess that was the beginning. And when did that? When was the fuse lit? What happened for that rocket ship to go to the stratosphere?
Well, so my first year, it was 2010, and it was Commonwealth Games year, and in Delhi, and I knew it was an outside chance because I had to step up from 10k to 20k, so basically a half marathon is the international distance. And I knew that was going to be hard in itself. I was picking up injuries because I was training so much more than I was before.
Of course, yeah.
And I was a 19-year-old living away from home, trying to figure out how to work the microwave to put a microwave meal in. You know, I was so far away from professional, but I made it. And so again, I just thought that was career highlight. That was it. I've peaked.
You went to India.
I went to India in 2010.
I think that's where I must have met you then. As India, London rather than London. We must have bumped into each other then. I think.
There you go.
What an experience that was, by the way.
Yeah.
I was 20, I think, and wow.
Yeah.
Commonwealth Games in India. Do you remember the story where? And this is a fact. You can, if people think I'm lying, you can Google this and check it out. Do you remember this being said? Like there were like wild monkeys were in the village.
Yeah, but there were monkeys in the village.
But do you know what they did? This is the truth. They went to the local zoo and got bigger, scarier monkeys and took them to the village. I had them up. And they let the big, scary monkeys out into the village to scare off the little, smaller, annoying monkeys. But then the big monkeys wouldn't come back. And then we had big monkeys in the village, just like running wild.
So yeah, there you go. I believe it. I mean, it was bizarre. It was one of my teammates. She was a bit older than me, and she said, "This will be the most extreme games you go to." And I think, bar the COVID games, which wasn't very extreme, it was just weird. It was. I think my first major champs was one of the most bizarre. It was cool, and that's why I remember it. Some of them I really don't. Are quite forgettable. I didn't particularly have a great race. I think I came 11th, and it was just it was just a cracking country. But they motivated me on. I wanted to go see more of the world.
Yeah,
I wanted to see how much better I could get, and so obviously the next aim was to get to London 2012.
So what happened in London?
So that London, obviously Olympics required a bit more of a bigger step up than Commonwealth. So I had to find about 3 minutes that year. Over 20k, which seems a lot, but over 20k, you know, it's realistic to step up that much, especially age 22, trying to develop, developing and so on. And what I've learned quite quickly is that I'm naturally quite good at this and very lean in hot countries. I can keep cool when trying to get around the races. So it was just how much I could push myself in training without getting injured. And at this point, I was starting to manage it. And I improved by 2 minutes and 41 seconds. So I missed London by 19 seconds, which was agony. Over 20k, not even a second a kilometre. So that was heartbreaking. I would have gone because that was the first time I hit UK sort of number one ranking. So it was so close. And I was devastated. I went home and I cried and cried and cried because everything, the whole world, as you know, in our country at that point was just revolving around London 2012. So I was gutted. But what I said to myself was, I'm never, ever, ever going to miss a major championships again. I said those words to myself. And I have 2 or 3 what I call fuck it moments, sorry for swearing, in my career. That was the first one. I didn't say those words, but that became one of those moments.
What do you mean by that?
So this is where the fuck it moment comes from. 2013 were the World Championships. I qualified for them and UK Athletics didn't select me. They said, we didn't think you're good enough. We don't think you're going to reach sort of... I think I was ranked about 30th in the world, 40th in the world at this point. And they said, we don't think you're going to top 8 ever or medal or anything like this. So I was like, well, that's annoying. Bit peed off by that. The following year was European Championships in Zurich, and instead of sort of getting on, I'd qualified for all the lottery funding and all this sort of thing, and I was coming to the end of uni, so I was like, I'm going to have to get a job, or I get on funding and my career takes off. So I didn't get on funding, and then they made the qualifying time for the Europeans over the race walk harder than the World Championships the year before. And I couldn't help but take that very personally. because there was only pretty much me at this point good enough to potentially be picked. And my coach would cycle with me as I would go around the streets of Leeds training. And I turned to him, and the day the qualifying criteria came out, I said, "Coach, have you seen the criteria?" He just said, "Yeah." My coach he never said much. And I said, "Fuck it. We're not going to go and qualify. We're going to go there to compete." And they were my words. I'm not going to just try and make this team. I want to get there and try and be competitive. And I did. And I got selected, and I finished about 12th. But I think now I'm probably in the top 10 due to Russians being banned. So that was really the Kickstarter of everything. From then on, I didn't miss the championships. And I moved up World Championships the next year. I finished 24th. And then the next year Rio happened, and I was in the shape of my life and had one of the best races of my life.
So at Rio, finally becoming an Olympian, you said you didn't think you were gonna ever make a career out of this. So when did the Olympic Games become a realistic thing you wanted to do?
Well, after that sort of London disappointment and the realization I was coming so close to Olympic Games, that was really it. That I was committed at that point. There was no doubt about it. And then I qualified as sports masseur to try and make some money on the side to keep sort of funding my career. And then finally, after those European Championships, I started to get some support from UK Athletics, and then ultimately the following year I got full on funding, and then I got my first ASICS deal, and so things started.
Ooh, how much did you get?
Oh my goodness, pence. Like for a race walker, it was a few grand sort of thing, but it made a big difference back then. And then Rio happened, and I went in ranked about 30th in the world and finished 6th in the British record, led most of the race. And I mean, it was the best day of my life. My parents were sick to their stomach because they were expected to see me out the back, not leading the Olympics. And I just wish I'd had a bit more belief. And it wasn't belief in me. It was, well, maybe it was. I believed in my plan, and I followed my plan, my race plan. It happened to take me to the front of the race. It was hot conditions, but again, I can deal with them. And I think that scared a few people. And ultimately, at about 16k in, the couple of Chinese, one of the Australians, and the Brazilian caught me and went past me, and then I dropped right back to 9th. And I went, "What on earth are you doing? You were just leading the Olympics. Get a move on!" And managed to claw back a few other places and move myself back up to 6th place. But I wish I knew I was able to compete at that point for a medal, because maybe I would have had a little bit more belief in those last few kilometres to not have dropped back. I still thought with about 4k to go, I might still finish top 20. That was in my head.
Really? So it's a mentality thing.
It was definitely.
Going from pretender to contender to champion. They're big jumps, and obviously you got to believe it first in your head. If you can't see it, you can't. If you don't believe it, you can't achieve it. And it's really silly. So it's a phrase said for decades and decades, but it's so true, isn't it? If you don't believe you deserve to be there, or it's really hard to do it. And so in hindsight, would you have? So what is it? Is it digging in? Is it pushing harder? Why did you drop back? Could you just not go anymore? What's it like when you're at the final stage of an endurance race?
I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I know I gave my all. I know I did.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have. I think what would have happened possibly is I would have clung on and maybe blown up. Maybe, we don't know. But would that blow up have meant I would have still finished 6th? I might have finished 5th. I
finished 10th.
I might finish 10th. Exactly. So we don't know. So I can't complain about that. And trust me, I know I gave my all. I had to go into anti-doping afterwards, and I apologised to the bloke who had to watch me wee into a cup as I had extreme diarrhea, and just sat there doing that whilst with a cup between my legs so it could collect the urine. Oh, the wonders of sport. And I was dead.
They're all volunteers, aren't they? They're all volunteers as well. What?
I looked him straight in the face and just said, "I'm really sorry, but I'm not at all, because I've just had the race of my life." So I'm just delighted. And what was worse was my coach wasn't there. Bless him. He was at home. Because we were just breaking into national team. He wasn't selected. But they didn't even send a coach down with me. They forgot because they overlooked race walking. So one of the media girls came with me, who never dished out a drinks book because we obviously take on fluid during the race and all sorts. I had to teach her what to do because it sounds all simple, giving out a bottle.
Final. Bloody hell.
But it's not. It's carnage. It's absolute carnage. There's 70 men on the road in the race. So,
and it's important, isn't it?
We're going. That would be. I think it was under 4-minute K. So I think that's about 6:30 miling for 20K. So an hour 23 half marathon. So we've got to, fuel correctly. There's so much science that goes into it. Ice vest beforehand, and I said, "This is my Olympic Games. What are you doing to me? Just because you think I'm not going to get a medal and you don't really know much about the event because we haven't had a male race walker for a couple of decades. You have now." And my mate of mine worked in the media team at Team GB that year, and he goes, "Oh, fuck! Is Tom going to win a medal and we've got nobody down there?" And so they gave me a nice apology for that. They were like, "We'll definitely be sending people with you next time."
And whilst in Rio, Harry proposed to you?
No, wrong.
You proposed to Harry?
I did.
Nice. Thank you for great. Bang, my wrist well and truly snapped. So truly, so you've announced yourself on the world stage. Team GB Athletics are finally looking at you like a real contender to a medal hope, a player, and you've just got engaged to your long-term partner. A truly life-changing experience.
Yeah, I planned it. I wanted to have the Olympic Games as something to share as well, not just about my race. So I remember buying the ring in Heathrow on the way out because I had to plan it all. I literally made sure the right size of the right ring was in the right store in Heathrow to collect it, because I was away from home for so long that if I'd bought it at the start of the year or whatever before I went away and it was the wrong size, it would have been out of its warranty to take back and change it. So I teed this all up perfectly. So me and Andrew Butchart and Tom Farrell, a couple of my teammates, we all got very excited as I went in, and I used 2 credit cards because that's how little money I had at the time. So I just split the engagement.
So what money were you on when you went to the Olympics in Rio? What money were you on the GB funding as a full-time athlete?
Probably with funding and a little bit of a sponsorship, maybe 12, 15 grand.
Yeah.
That was it. And look, race walking and a lot of other events, most of the throws events, they don't get sponsors, they don't get these sorts of things. So I learned you've got to tell your story, you've got to market yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to have a bit about you, a bit of personality about you alongside your performances. The performances are the credibility, but if you can make a bit of a name for yourself and a bit of a character, and anybody who watched me race, when I'd win or break a record, or there'd be celebrations, I'd try and get the crowd involved. I'd always try and give a passionate and good interview afterwards, and always stop and talk to anybody who wanted a picture, or the kids, all of that. I just tried to give back as much as possible because the sport had given me so much.
I mentioned at the beginning, you are this happy, lovable, personable, charismatic fellow that people watching and listening to this I'm sure can attest to. But you got some dark times in your life. It hasn't always been singing and dancing in Rio Olympics and engagement rings. It's been some tough times. Now, from on the outward looking in, this is where life kind of gets tough. This is where, on this hero's journey I mentioned earlier, where you go through your struggles and setbacks, any adversity hits. Bring me up to London 2017.
So we had a World Championships in London. The month before, we had the first ever race walk in a Diamond League at London at the Anniversary Games, where I broke a world record over the mile. I was in pretty good shape, but after Rio, I realised, I want to go and become world champion, or at least get on the podium and these sorts of things over the next few years. My aim was to do a top 8 at least at every major championships, World, Olympic, European and Commonwealth. So I got that at Rio at the Olympics. It was 1 ticked off. So I went into London with a minimum of a top 8 finish in my mind. I'd picked up a little injury in the month before that plagued just the final few weeks. So I wasn't too stressed over it because, as we say, most of the work in endurance, especially for the race, is done 6 to 10 weeks before. Then So I wasn't stressed about it. I was in great shape. It was the most extreme race I'd ever done, not conditions wise, but because suddenly the race walk in Rio, let me explain this, was on the BBC Red Button with Australian commentators, and at like 8 o'clock at night or midnight or whatever, because of the time difference. A year later, the World Championships, the race walking, they'd put on BBC Two on a Sunday afternoon, and the race course was in front of Buckingham Palace on the Mall. Now, I didn't have anything to do with the race course, but I know they gave me a lot of airtime on that final Sunday of the World Championships. And with Team GB, the British team, had an awful World Championships. Farah was the only person who had medalled. And I thought, hey, it could just be me, Mo, and the relay guys who can medal here. This would be massive. And instead of thinking about the process, I was just thinking about the outcome. And I knew I had this niggling injury. And I started to shut myself away that week because I was so nervous. And I'd never been nervous because I never cared. As in, it never really mattered. I was only there having fun. And now suddenly, my social media was on fire. I was, being talked about on telly all week. There was sort of attention on me and this event of race walking that nobody had ever heard of before, and suddenly it was all about me, and I loved it, but it didn't do me any favors. When I got on that race course, the crowds were 3 or 4 people deep all the way around the 2 kilometer lap, because it was in just such an iconic location, and our British fans are brilliant, so they're just screaming. They didn't. Some of them wouldn't even know who I was, but they saw the British vest in first place, and they were just going mental. And I mean, people were leaning as far over the fence that they were in my face, and I'm like, you're literally going to get hit, people. You need to move back. It was carnage. It was brilliant. And so, but the pressure there, I'd never been so nervous on the start line. I felt sick. I started, and I think I didn't want to disappoint. So every time I would drop back in the lead pack, I would then make a stupid move and push myself up to the front. And I felt like I had to be in first. I had to not let any of these people down. And then in race walking, there's obviously the 2 rules to make sure that you are walking, not running. And in the space of 1 lap, there's 8 judges on the course as well. I got 3 red cards, which means you get disqualified. So I had clear loss of contact with the ground because I was doing these stupid spurring, faster than slower, faster than slower. My technique was all over the shop, and the judges were just like, "What are you doing?" And coming up to 12k in first place, I was disqualified, and it was good. It was national telly. It was great for the TV companies. It was great for sort of a bit of a story. It was probably one of the few times that I've been recognised outside the sport after that. Was, oh, you got disqualified on the Mall in London. I was like, yes, thanks very much. But it hurt because I felt like I'd let so many people down, family, friends, fans. And I, at this point, as you know, I wasn't at home. I was training at altitude. I was committing my life. So it was like huge disappointment compared to the summer before. And I didn't know where to turn. So I went into my off season and started partying and started thinking, I just want to have fun. This sport malarkey is hard bloody work. I don't want to lose. And it was nothing. It wasn't like a sore loser or anything like that. Race walking, you get disqualified. These things happen. It sucks. That was my only disqualification in 10 years, but that's the way it is. It wasn't anything about that. It was how I felt like I'd let so many people down because I wasn't really meant to be there anyway. I wasn't ever good enough anyway. And then I gave this opportunity to what felt like the cherry on the cake was a medal at those World Championships. And that's when my head became my worst enemy, and I wouldn't turn up for training, and I would be hungover, and I wouldn't feel like going out, going training, because I'd been out the night before. And instead of being home in my off season when I should be with Harry and my family, I wasn't. The only time I had before getting back into this winter training, I'd blown, and that really caused difficulties for me and Harry. And it wasn't really until we had Commonwealth Games 2018 really early in 2018 because it was in Australia, so it gave me some sort of focus. And I was angry and committed to get on that podium, and I did, and I set the British record, and I'd given my all to that race, and I blanked out everything else. And as soon as that happened, I came home from Australia. I went to China and then came home from Australia, barely talking with Harry, barely talking with my family, and came home and had a couple of weeks before we had to prepare for European Championships that summer, and I just didn't go home really, and I hated myself. I didn't really enjoy the sport at that point, and all from not really managing a bad result, and feeling all this commitment and resentment against myself had snowballed over the 6-month period to such an unhealthy routine that it wasn't just, oh, I'm a bit upset and I'm a bit depressed. This had blown my personality to shreds. Most people were like, Tom, are you okay? You're so quiet. You know, I'm normally the leader on camp. I try and get people together. I always socialise, and I was doing none of it. I was locked away in my room. I was so miserable all the time, and I'd get upset because me and Harry would then argue, and I was just miserable. I should have just gone home. I wish I'd just gone home at this point. But then I went back up to altitude to prepare for the European Championships that summer, and I tore my quad in that race, again leading, and finished 7th. So I was happy with that. I was happy. I was exhausted. I didn't really care too much about the medal at that point. I wanted a good show of myself. I tore my quad. I couldn't really do much about that. And I went home, and then, you know, it was just World War III with me and Harry.
What was the problem between you two?
Well, I just wasn't there. I wasn't giving Harry any time. I wasn't giving Harry anything. I was treating him like absolute crap, but I was treating myself like crap. Who wants to be with somebody when they're behaving like that, when they're constantly miserable? And it had this. I didn't go from happy, bubbly to that overnight, but because I'd been away so much, so stressed, so focused on trying to sort of get back on the sort of performance pathway and where I wanted to be, that I just neglected everything and forgotten what being a decent human being was about. So by the time I came home and faced the music, I guess, and facing the music was more, I had to be at home with my own head, and that was the worst thing. And it got to the point Harry was like, you need to quit the sport. It's become so unhealthy. You know, you're doing nothing else at all, and you don't speak to anybody else, and you seem so down, and even some other people are saying you're so down all the time. And I was like, no, you're wrong. What else have I got? If I quit, what else have I got? I've got a few qualifications, but I've got no life experience. I'm 28. What else am I meant to do? I've got my sponsors, I've got funding, I've now got sort of following on social media, an expectation that I thought existed. And I felt it stuck between a rock and a hard place, which led, unfortunately, then to that point where I was, you know, so down, so depressed that on 2 occasions in that autumn, I tried to take my own life because I felt like that was the only way out at that point. Or I was going to lose my career, or I'd lose Harry, and I was so miserable. None of it made me happy. Nothing made me happy. And I look at it now and look at that person and think, whoa, I do not recognise that person at all.
What was the first time? I know the second time. We'll talk more on what was the first time.
First time, me and Harry had an argument, and I went into the bathroom, and Harry knew I'd spoken a couple of times about trying to take my own life, and wanted to sort of cut my wrists. And Harry kicked the lock in on the bathroom door and stopped me. And he's like, enough's enough. And then probably about a week later, we were talking through the next year, and it was going to be a long year because World Championships were at the end of 2019. And Harry said, you can't do it. You can't go away from home like this. He was so worried about me. He said, you've got to either take some time away, get some help or something, but you're not doing it. And he was right. I mean, I neglected him so much. He just wanted some love. He just wanted his partner back.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad for how I treated him. And the second time there was, I just got in the car, Harry phoning me late at night. And I drove to the local motorway bridge, which I still have to drive across now, which never got any easier. And I got out of the car, walked up and climbed that bridge. And if it wasn't for a passerby, probably that night would have jumped.
When you say that, what do you feel? Just kind of like retelling that story, standing, like climbing over that rail and standing there. You know, that the wind going through your hair and like the thoughts in your head. What were you thinking about?
I wasn't really thinking about much at that point. You know, I was just a mess. And I look at it now, and what I've learned about mental health now is what scares me. It gives me sweaty palms thinking about it now. Is when people do need a cry for help, they often tell people, you know, I might be thinking about committing suicide, or they threaten it a little bit.
Yeah.
And when people go and commit suicide, they don't often tell anyone. There's no sort of, you know, people say, oh, he just went to bed, he was fine, and woke up the next day and he was gone. You hear that a lot, and I can see that because it wasn't a planned thing. I didn't send a load of text messages or write a note. I just got in the car and went, and I was adamant I was going to do it, and that's what frightens me the most, because it was real, and yeah, almost the passerby broke that sort of trance I was in, and at that point I jumped in the car, probably drove far too fast than I should have, and got back to Harry because I was probably having a panic attack or something like that, and it was at that point that you know, the next morning I then phoned UKA and got some help, and they were bloody brilliant from the off. So thank goodness for Harry and them.
For Harry, for the passerby, for the people looking after you, and funnily enough, this is question 5. We spent a long time on question 4. Next one's be much faster. This is called Getting Back Up. This podcast is Getting Back Up. I'll talk to people like yourself with inspiring, and your story is so inspiring. And both, I just want to say how brave you are to talk so candidly about such a momentous and painful moment in your life. So I really think you're very, 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 very inspiring, mate. How did you get back up? How did you get back up? What did you do? How did you overcome that?
Yeah, it did take years. It really, sort of 2020, how ironic, was probably one of the more happier years of my life. You know, since that was the first time I probably felt content again, and happier again. And you know, I work with a brilliant sports psychologist through UKA, and he was fantastic, and he just taught me about understanding human foundations, as if you were a house. You know, your house would fall down if you didn't have the right foundations, and that to me was brilliant, because it just resonated. He said, one foundation is you being an athlete, one is Harry, one's a dog owner, one's being a son. You know, and if you don't have all of them, it all comes crumbling down, which is what's happened. So working with him, and you know, I delayed going away training or anything like that until the start of the new year, and just started to communicate. And I would spend a lot more. Obviously, that therapy really helped, but it was then the little things off the back of it. It was trying to be understanding to how Harry felt with it all. He'd been through a lot. He became, you know, really quite depressed himself as a result of it, and the way I treated him. And so it was building that trust with little things, making him a cup of tea in the morning. That's more important than, I can start training 5 minutes later after I've made him a cup of tea. You know, a phone call. I now try to see my parents all the time. You know, if there's an argument with me and Harry, or with anybody, one of my friends, or as we have a disagreement, I just try and laugh it off now. You know, it's just so irrelevant, and it doesn't ever need to be anything more than it is, because I've just got a total different mindset to it all, which has made all of this I went through has actually made me a much better person, because I used to be I was very motivated, I was very competitive, and so now I'm so much more relaxed about things. And I went on and had some of the best years then because I was so much happier. By the end of 2019, a year later, I was in a much better place, still getting some therapy. Me and Harry were in a better place, and I can remember walking around what's called the call room, the holding room before the event, and we were in Doha, and I had my ice pack on, and we were racing at midnight because it's 40 degrees out there under the floodlights. It was an epic race, and everybody looked terrified of what we were about to go through because it was going to be hell. And I was singing along to The Greatest Showman in my headphones without a care in the world, because I was like, this is going to be horrendous. This is going to be awful, but what will be, will be. And again, I finished 7th that day. I had been injured that summer, and given everything I'd been through, I was just delighted, A, to be there, B, to still be at that sort of level. I then headed into 2020, set a world lead over 5K and a British record over 10K that following week. I was about to do my first 20K. There weren't many people at the speed I was at that point in March of 2020. And then COVID hit, and I just felt, this was my year to win a medal at the Olympic Games. And I was devastated. I walked the dog, had a cry when the games were cancelled and all this, and said, look, there's so much more important things going on in the world right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It really doesn't matter. It really, really doesn't matter. Everything I'd been through had prepared me for what was a huge disappointment. When you're in the peak of your career, you're 30 years old, you think that's going to be it. And then you've got to do it all over again for the following year, a year older. And ultimately, I got injured and had a bit of an average, finished 20th or something at Tokyo, which I was still delighted with because I was really injured. But it wasn't that medal. But everything I'd been through prepared me for that sort of mental shift that I had to do and say, what will be, will be.
You got your you walked off your John Wayne moment, walk off to the sunset at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, 2022. Yep. We spoke about how happy you are to be retired now. You're in a good place in your life. You sound like you're in a great place. But like your achievements, is your crowning achievement, is it the world records?
World records were great because they put the sport on the map. They were short distances and big track meets. But for me, captaining England at the Commonwealth Games was epic, and British record medal there. Rio, go to those Olympics, and that 6th and British record. It's what I class the overachievement moments, which obviously the world records are. But for me, it was that 2018 Commonwealths was one of my favourites. Maybe even Doha, because I was so injured and I still finished 7th in the world. I don't know which one.
I want to rattle through these final questions. Who inspires you, both as a kid, as a youngster? As I see 3 Tom Bosworths, and you can tell me if I'm, obviously there's way more. But hearing you talk, I hear the youngster, the one who didn't like school, who was kind of trying to figure himself out, the elite athlete, and the MBE now. Who inspired each of them?
First one was my first coach, and second one was my second coach, probably. And then and now, this is going to sound really arrogant, the me's before me now, because God, I don't want to be anything like what I was in 2017, 18, 19, and the lessons I've learned.
That's not arrogant, mate. That's growth. That's growth. And I mentioned this whole hero's journey. Every hero, when on their journey, they meet a mentor, a guide. I think Pinocchio had Jiminy Cricket. Someone to help him along the way, and it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a younger version of yourself, a better version, a worse version of yourself. Like whether we're getting inspired to be better, that's all that counts. Right now, mate, as you sit here now, retired athlete with these world records to your name, what's your mission?
People to get a little bit healthier.
Yeah.
And or to enjoy sport for what it is. And walking is the most basic form of exercise and movement we can do. And right now, that's what I'm pushing. I'm trying to show people the benefits of walking, because we heard all about people walking in COVID and all these sorts of things. But I think for those that don't do any exercise, perhaps have long-term illnesses, perhaps are scared to leave their own house, they ultimately can't exercise. They're not going to pull on Lycra. They might not be able to afford a brand new bike, whatever it is. But walking just a few steps on day one can change your life. Race walking changed my life for so many good reasons. And now I'm sort of simplifying that, and that's sort of my mission right now. That's why I'm working with a lot of schools, and I would love to see walking prescribed by GPs, and this is sort of the mission I'm working with local councils and things. But for me, if I can motivate people to do what they love by just turning up every day rather than focusing on being the very, very best at it, then I think I've got my message across, and far more people will live a little happier and probably succeed a little more.
I love that. When you were competing, what was your why? Your why to get up and go to the gym, your why to put headphones in your ears and just walk and walk and walk until your hips were all damaged. I know you had some back injuries as well. What drove you? What was pushing you? What was your why?
It went from letting everybody else down and those sorts of thoughts in 2016, 17 to what can I do? And that's what it was beforehand, and that's what it was afterwards. It was, if I'm not doing it today, what's the point in doing it tomorrow? Because sport isn't like a bit of homework that you can catch up on. Sport is sacrificing every single day for it, and that's why it was. I knew when I was at my best, I knew my rivals were out doing it, so I needed to. And I said to myself, "You're undermining yourself by if you're just focusing on the key sessions each week. It's actually the rest of it that makes up the training. That is the stuff that makes a difference."
It's all the 1%, and
all the 1%.
All the 1%. It's taking your water. When I used to train, I used to take 2 bottles of water to train in, because I knew I'd go through one. And if I'm in round 10 in the sparring session and I've run out of water, then maybe I'm not going to train as hard. The last 2 rounds going to be dehydrated, and that little bit of water can give me an extra energy to throw 3 more punches in the spar, which could translate to 1 punch in a fight. That punch lands, I win the fight. And I've won many fights. Never lost a fight on a countback, but I've won many fights on a countback where the scores are tied, or I've won by 1 point. Question number 10, a couple more. I want to get through to the quickfire round as well, round 13. Number 10, what does it take to become a champion or a world record holder?
The most common thing is staying power. It's not even commitment. It's just that turning up is the term I use all of the time. Because if you turn up and you do even half your best, and whether that's in training or, like today, I turned up to a school event. I was a little tired, but I thought, even if I'm only motivating 6 of the 400 kids there today, that's 6 more kids that I've motivated than none if I hadn't turned up.
After everything you've done, mate, 3 questions here. What motivates you? What are you most proud of? And what are you most grateful for?
What motivates me now is all the new challenges. Try to be the best at that. And that's the best version of me. What am I grateful for?
Most proud of?
Most proud of the whole career.
Mm-hmm.
Because the skinny ginger gay lad, age 15, would have laughed at you and probably been quite rude if you had said that this is what I would have gone on and done, and I would have had a career in sport.
That's amazing. And what are you most grateful for?
Probably, oh God, I didn't expect to get upset. Probably just my first coach and everything he didn't do for me, in terms of, he didn't push me. He didn't make me train when I didn't want to. If I wanted to kick a football around and piss him off, he let me do that. And
he allowed you to be you.
It just encouraged us to enjoy being outside, doing some sort of sport and activity, because that's what he enjoyed seeing kids do.
Around number 11, almost there. What's next for Tom Bosworth MBE?
What is next? All sorts. I'm working within the sport, and I'm doing things I now want to do in terms of, because of what the sport's given me. I've got some opportunities to work within the media and all those sorts of things.
Commentating, presenting.
Yeah, that's it. Really lucky to get to do some of those things.
We did a presenting course together, didn't
we? Did.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Very good fun. But it's also, I'd like me and Harry to adopt.
Oh,
I'd like to move house. There were some big life moments as well.
Mate, you made it to round 12. This is a championship round for the last round. This is amazing. I'm loving this podcast. This is going to be a bit of a quick fire round. I was going to do 3 minutes, but I want to wrap up before 3 minutes. So I'm going to say some stuff. I would like some real short answers back. I'm going to start with places. I want you to tell me, when I say this place, what comes to your head? The PE changing rooms.
Oh, tears.
Copacabana Beach.
Me and Harry drinking cocktails after the engagement.
The start line in Rio.
Worry I'd fucked it up because I'd taken too many Imodiums.
Apparently you hadn't, because later that day,
I really had.
Me. Pall Mall, the boy that cried on the Mall.
A lot of mixed emotions. One of the best days and worst days of my life.
The motorway bridge.
Silence.
Who's the world's greatest athlete?
Oh no. I nearly said a good friend of mine, Alistair Brownlee, but he's just insane. World's greatest athlete. Oh, Jessica Ennis-Hill.
The circus or presenting?
The circus.
So we didn't say this, but Tom, this is for part 2, when Tom does the next big challenge. Tom ran away to the circus when he was a teenager, which is definitely to be elaborated on the next time. Coke or Sprite?
Coke, but neither.
Looking good or being fit?
Being fit.
Fast or strong?
Fast.
MBE or the world record?
World record.
Happily married or Olympic gold?
Happily married.
Being a pioneer or being in the middle of the pack?
You need to do both, but yeah, being a pioneer.
I say that because what we haven't spoken about really, Tom was the first GB track and field athlete to come out as being gay. We mentioned about Harry and stuff, but you're very much a pioneer in that field, in that community. So well done for you. Mo Farah or Paula Radcliffe?
Oh no!
Mate, that's the question. Round 12. Are you going to fail? Are you going to fall in the final round? He's on the ropes. He's wobbling. His knees are wobbling. Is he going to tap out?
I love you.
Throw the towel in, coach.
Paula, because her and Gary, her husband, did a lot for me. But I love you as well too, Mo. Sorry, Mo.
So, drugs cheats. 2-year ban or a life ban?
Life ban.
Kids or no kids?
Kids.
Money or happiness?
Oh, happiness. With a bit of money.
With a few quid in the back pocket. Mr. Tom Bosworth. Well, you're the first person to go 12 rounds with Anthony Go. Mate, you did a great job.
Thank you very much.
Stood there. You gave as good as you got. That was fantastic, man. I really want to thank you for your time. And for all the lovely listeners that listen to this, where can I follow you and watch your journey?
All over the shop. I am at Tom Bosworth on most platforms: Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I'd love to connect and hear your walking adventures.
And you've got some stuff coming up. You're doing some things yourself, aren't you? Coming up, your own podcast and stuff. And
loads going on. I'm doing some walking and talking, which is my own sort of, as you say, podcast style. And obviously, I'm launching quite a big walking campaign as well, which I'm really, really excited about.
The world is your oyster. Tom Bosworth, MBE, thank you so much, mate, for coming on the podcast today. You're an absolute legend. I wish you all the very best in everything you do moving forwards. And at some point down the road, you're going to come back on and let us know what you've been doing.
I will. Thanks for having me.
I've known Tom now for a long time, but personally for a couple of years. And I had no idea. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I had no idea his story got as dark as it did. And you'd never know talking to him. He's so fun and so happy and so light all the time. And I said I never knew there was darkness within him. And again, I want to thank him again for being so honest and open, and I want to thank his partner for supporting him, for being one of those pillars he talks about. There's so much there in this podcast, so much inspiration to be had. Yes, we're not all going to go to the Olympic Games. We're not all going to become members of the British Empire and have world records like Tom has, but there are lessons there for us all to be had. And for me, there's loads of takeaways in that podcast, but for me, the number one takeaway is he mentioned the word staying power. Staying power. It's consistency. It's turning up day in, day after day, whether you're getting the results, not just being there, turning up like he did. I mean, that's what it's all about, just sticking around until eventually, there's an old saying, there's a barbershop, if you turn up at the barbershop every single day, eventually you'll get a slot. Eventually you'll get your trim, you'll get your shape up. Usain Bolt said he trained 4 years to run 9 seconds, and most people give up if they don't see results after 2 months. And that's the thing, the difference between the good and the great. They turn up day in and day out. Tom didn't excel for a lot until quite late into his career, really, but he was there. He gave himself the chance. All we have is our stories in life. That's all we really have. And we own us. They're ours. You know, you can lose your house, you can lose your car, your money, your this, your that, but our stories belong to us. And that's why it's always such an honor when someone comes on and shares their story for the betterment of us, because it's ours. They're personal to us. So thank you, Tom. Everybody, you're going to go through ups and downs in this next week, month, year, decade. When you go down, like Tom did, when you go down, always get back up. Always get back up. I'm so proud of Tom for getting back up when he was physically and emotionally, metaphorically on the floor at his lowest ebb. He got back up, he went to the Worlds, he went to the Commonwealth Games, he got his swan song, Birmingham in 2022, he got his swan song, he walked onto the sunset, rightly so, as a British race walking legend. He got his MBE, I'm so proud of him. Wherever you're striving for out there, wherever you're listening to this, keep going, keep getting after it. Take care this week, and I'll see you next week.